If you watched my last video, you saw how I got thousands of dollars in refund checks from Wells Fargo. And so many of you did exactly what I told you, and boy did it pay off. And since my last video, I've gotten even more money by pleading my case in front of a judge. And guess what? I recorded the entire thing.
He's actually offering you more than I've seen anybody offered in doing these mediations.
So if you originally got lowballed or you haven't received a paycheck yet, you'll want to listen to my opening statement so you'll know what to say to the other big banks like Navy Federal, Chase, and Bank of America. So let's start from the beginning. Before I spoke with the judge, there were 4 important steps that I had to take first. So the first thing I had to do was contact Wells Fargo and tell them that I actually wasn't satisfied with that amount. Now, I know receiving a $1,000 check in the mail unexpectedly sounds like a pretty good deal, but they actually say in their own letter that if you're not happy with this amount, contact us so that we can work it out for you. So I called the specialized hotline and they sent me a mediation request form where I had to list out how much I wanted and the reasons why I felt that I was entitled to more compensation. So the next step that I had to do was schedule a time to talk with Wells Fargo during what's called pre-mediation. Now, pre-mediation is essentially where you speak with a Wells Fargo representative and they basically try to come up with a number to offer you on top of the checks that you previously received. Now, they do this in exchange for you agreeing not to go to mediation, which is done over the phone with a judge. So I asked the Wells Fargo representative what amount they essentially wanted to offer me as part of this pre-mediation. He offered me a whopping $700.
You serious?
Now, guys, $700 may sound like a lot, but for me personally, it just wasn't enough. Now, it's your personal choice if you decide to take what they offer in pre-mediation and run. And as I've said before, I'm not an attorney, but I personally felt that it was in my best interest to go into mediation with the judge to potentially get more money. Now, this isn't an actual court appearance. This is literally just a 3-way phone conversation with you, the Wells Fargo rep, and the judge. So basically you're having this conversation and it's all done over the phone. It's not even a Zoom call, so it's not very intimidating. Now, be aware that Wells Fargo doesn't really want you to go in front of the judge. So they tried to pull 2 particular scare tactics on me. So the first tactic that they tried to use was insinuating that if I go to mediation in front of a judge, I could possibly walk away with nothing. Now, this is false simply because any money that they've already paid out or sent to you via check in the mail is absolutely yours to keep. So in my situation, I was already up by $2,000. There was no way that I would walk away with nothing. So I didn't let that deter me. The second scare tactic that they tried to use was by telling me that mediation could take up to 2 hours. Now, of course, when you hear 2 hours in front of a judge, it really can kind of scare you into thinking that maybe that's not something you want to do, especially if you don't have a law degree. This also wasn't true because it only took about 15 minutes for us to ultimately reach an agreement during the mediation call. And honestly, throughout that call, I was very comfortable and the judge was super nice, and I didn't feel like I needed a law degree in order to plead my case. But before I went to mediation, step 3 in this process was to actually prepare for the mediation. Now, the most important part of mediation is called your opening statement. The judge is going to ask you to provide an opening statement which essentially breaks down why you're wanting additional compensation and how you came to that calculation. Now, let me give you a few tips. You cannot go in there saying that you want $1 million and that it's all Wells Fargo's fault that you don't live the life that you want to live. They are not going to go for that. During mediation, you want to make sure that your opening statement is very intentional and calculated because they're going to want to know how you got to the number that you're asking for. And then they're going to want to know how Wells Fargo is responsible for any damages that you're claiming were caused to you. Now, if this seems intimidating to you, I actually put together a script to highlight all of the main points that I said during my opening statement, which ultimately helped me reach a much higher payout. So step 4 is actually dialing into the conference call with the judge in Wells Fargo. So I know that talking to a judge sounds like a super intimidating process, but rest assured, it was a pretty easy process to go through with the judge. The judge is ultimately there to help you determine just how much money you should be asking for from Wells Fargo. So in a way, it kind of felt like the judge was on my side. So once I gave my opening statement, the judge responded, and here's what he said.
Okay, Jasmine, I had a chance to talk to you, and I appreciate your statement that tells about the impact that this had upon you. I empathize with that you've been through a lot as a result of this breach of trust on behalf of Wells Fargo. As far as the situation with these mediations, these Wells Fargo representatives are given a certain amount of authority and they can't exceed it.
So I was kind of nervous as I waited for the judge in Wells Fargo to come back with an ultimate number, because initially Wells Fargo had only offered me $700 in pre-mediation. Now, $700 wasn't enough for me, and honestly, I would have been more so happy to walk away with $2,000 or so. But when the judge came back with Wells Fargo's offer, I literally had to pinch myself because it was so much more than what I thought I could get. $5,600 was an amazing first offer, and as exciting as that was, I know that the first rule of negotiation is you never accept the first offer.
Never accept their first offer. What is your second offer?
So I wanted to keep pushing for just a little bit more. So I told the judge that I ultimately would be rejecting Wells Fargo's initial offer and that I wanted to place a counter offer. So the judge asked me what my counter offer was, and once I gave him that number, he told me that he wanted to place me on hold again while he deliberated with Wells Fargo on the other line.
He's actually offering you more than I've seen anybody offered in doing these mediations. His offer today is $6,600.
So as you heard, the judge now comes back with even more money, $6,600. Now, you guys, I was getting even more excited, and for a split second, I just wanted to take my money and run. But I know that negotiations are not over until somebody gives a final offer. So I held out for the best and final offer, and I told the judge that I would be again rejecting Wells Fargo's number. So I came up with a lower counter offer, and the judge told me to hold on while he spoke with Wells Fargo. So the judge finally came back with an offer from Wells Fargo that they said would be their best and final offer. Let's listen to how much they ultimately offered me.
So basically, like I say, he's at $7,600. And so now it's just a question if you want to accept it for these purposes and then pursue whatever, legal claim you may have against Wells Fargo. That's your prerogative.
I was so elated. This literally started with me just minding my business and going to my mailbox one day and opening up my mailbox to see all these checks just sitting in the mail. Now, remember I told you they started out with offering me an additional $700 for these claims? We ultimately landed on $7,600. That is 10 times what was originally offered to me. Now, I would not have gotten this amount had I not gone to mediation. Now, as invigorating as that was for me, I was even more excited for you guys, because it led me to research other big banks like Navy Federal, Chase, and Bank of America. And to my pleasant surprise, these banks were giving out refund checks as well. But you have to call the right number and use the right email address, because if you call the general bank phone numbers for any of these banks, they're basically going to tell you that they're not responsible for the payouts or that they just don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want.
Every product type has a unique department that ultimately handles it. So I went undercover and I ultimately compiled a full list of the names, numbers, and email addresses of those hidden departments that you would have to reach out to get your payouts. And y'all know I did this because I love you guys. So if you had an auto loan, mortgage, credit card, or even just a checking account with any of the financial institutions that I just mentioned, make sure you check out this PDF that I put together for you in your PayBump portal to see exactly who you need to contact. Because remember, the departments are specific and there's only one unique number for each product type. There's even been payments for things like gap insurance and overdraft fees. So at this point, you should be leaving no stone unturned because chances are you got a big payday coming to you, but you just need to make sure you locate it. This is applicable to both current and past customers of these big banks. Even if you don't have access to these accounts or if you closed those accounts years ago, you could be like me and still receive thousands of dollars in payouts. Now, I know I went through a mediation with a judge, but again, it's mediation, which doesn't prohibit me from still suing them in my local court. So, will I actually continue with this process and sue Wells Fargo for additional money? You'll have to stay tuned to find out. In the meantime, comment down below and let me know which bank you're going to be contacting today, and I will see you on the other side.